Good morning, YouTube. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever, whenever you are. I hope this finds you well. I am Shaggy. I am Philaletea. It is still very early in the morning, just after dawn. It's just now starting to get warm. I'm sure you can hear the birds and the bees and the other bugs buzzing around my tent. I am going to do something. This is another entry in the Something to Do About Nothing podcast. We are going to be on, I believe, part 3 of Chasing Derrida. I'm not going to remember the numbers of all of these forever. But we are going to be doing what may appear to you to be a diversion. Instead of continuing to read the Phaedrus, I'm actually going to read for you from Homer. We're going to read from Odysseus, because there are some themes and some things in the Phaedrus that I didn't know were there, and that I didn't know I was going to feel compelled to talk about. And so because no one else talks about them, that's why I didn't know they were there, I'm compelled to talk about them. But there are a cluster of words that actually aren't in Phaedrus, that Plato never says. But they're words that would be used to describe what he's talking about, especially much later. And so whether I can hypothesize that they're in his mind or I can theorize that they're in his mind or not doesn't matter if they're not present for me to talk about. I don't want to react to and I don't want to present things that are not in the text as what the text is talking about. I want to present things that were in the cultural milieu and then allow you to hear the text and contemplate the text and read the text on your own and test whether they're there or not. Test them for fire, in other words. And even fire for truth is something that we're just not ready to get at. We're just not ready to get at Derrida. So as we look for and as we chase down Derrida, we're going to take a diversion into Homer, and we're going to read from the Odyssey. And before I get in, there are a couple things I need to tell you, and I'm going to forget the second one, but the first one is the most important. The most important thing is that my copy of Odysseus is from the Latin. It's in English, translated from the Latin. So the names are the Latin names. So like Odysseus' name is Ulysses, and I'm just not going to feel like changing that every time. I might not. The point is that the translation, the reason that this one is available and was never like struck from the market isn't because it's making money. It's because the Latin was faithful to the Greek. The only problem is that the series of words that I want to talk about, including nostos, Nostos, in English, that word means homecoming, return. It means return over a body of water. It's not present. That word isn't present in Phaedrus, but Homer is. Plato puts in Socrates' mouth a critique of Homer's work. And the critique that he's using is that Homer didn't have any particular gnosis in Gnosis. Now those words, nostos and gnosis, can sound very similar. And so they're not in the text. And there's a reason for that. There's a sound like, is like correlation happening there that's in the spoken only, that people just weren't writing down. And so I'm not going to teach you, like Manly P. Hall, that it was happening at the time and that there's this deep connected school of mystery learning about secret words like gnosis and nostos. Not what I'm going to do, because I don't think there's any evidence of it. What I'm going to do is, if we continue chasing Derrida, or we continue just doing something about nothing, we are eventually going to talk deeply about the Gnostic Christians and Plotinus. And they probably were using those words in that way. I have no evidence because I haven't studied the Greek from these people, because I haven't cared until I realized that I needed to communicate it to other people. And so here we are, chasing down Derrida so I can communicate fundamental truths about reality to you. Not philosophy. We're going to be doing meta-cosmology. We're going to be building out not just a worldview that you can live with and not just an understanding of the reality around us, but we're going to be building out something that can make a religion for the future that other people can work toward perfecting, but I can articulate it. And that's a big goal. And thankfully, I said it in 5 minutes, so it won't be in the short that goes out to the public. Okay. I've never read Odysseus all the way through. I've listened to a bunch of lectures about it. I've listened to a bunch of people talk about it. And so I'm not going to do a great job, and it's probably something we're going to have to revisit. Like, I'm probably just going to have to revisit the symposium for YouTube, because asking you to go and watch my Patreon reading of the symposium is going to leave you flat, because I wasn't reading it for setting the groundwork of Phaedrus. I was just reading it for the proof of concept that I'm a pretty good reader. Okay, I think I'm ready. So, forgive that I'm not going to do the best voices for all of these characters, and I'm going to fumble this more often than I'm not. But I'm going to try to articulate some deep cosmological or philosophical, metaphysical, some deep truths to you. I am Shaggy. The Shaggy is a shaggy dog storyteller. That means that I tell stories that have no real beginning, no real ending, and no real point, but I can string them together for hours. I can do that because I have a tipping audience. I have one tipping audience member right now regularly, and sometimes other people tip, and I have food here now. So I have food, I have 52% of my external battery, I have 44% of my primary battery. We are good to go for a couple of hours probably. And so I'm just going to do this without stretching it out, but I can't promise you at the end of this that I'm going to land and that it's going to be a 10. And I can't also promise you that I can fit all of the Odyssey into 2 hours, because I think it's like a 12-hour performance. So what I'm going to do is I'm most for certain going to read book 1. I know that. And then I'm going to skip the Telemachy, about Telemachus and all the backstory of the Odyssey, because that's not important to me. And then we're going to read the chapter about Odysseus escaping from Calypso, because I just fucking hate everything I've seen about that damn musical on YouTube. So 2 birds, 1 stone, something to do, parenthetical, about nothing. And the nothing is the feeling that like nothing matters and everything I do is misunderstood, and so I could just retreat into myself and be happy within myself. And instead I'm going to do something that's not retreating within myself. So no guarantees I land with both feet. If you thought I did, please consider a subscription now. I'm saying it now, rather, so that at the end I don't have to say it again. And if you really like it, please consider checking out the Patreon or my tip jars. They're both in my profile. In fact, you can scroll me down and check out just exactly how much I'm not like you or other people in my profile right now. Continuing on. Homer, who's something like 500 years before Plato. Book 1. This is one of the books, if you don't know, because maybe not everybody knows. Not everybody needs to be a history nerd, or not everybody needs to have paid attention in 6th grade, even though we all heard it. Homer is one of the people that set the foundation for Greek culture, and so Homer also helped set the foundation for what we now describe as Western culture. So the way you think, was found in this book. Tell me, O Muse, and now he is singing, so I could do it. Tell me, O Muse, of that ingenious hero, but I'm not going to, who traveled far and wide after he had sacked the famous town of Troy. Many cities did he visit, and many were the nations with whose manners and customs he was acquainted. I did do a reading like that of Hesiod's Theogony on my Patreon. I sung it. I don't know if it got uploaded, but I did it once. Many cities did he visit, and many were the nations with whose manners and customs he was acquainted. Moreover, he suffered much by sea while trying to save his own life and bring his men safely home. But do what he might, he could not save them, for they perished. through their own sheer folly in eating the cattle of the sun god Hyperion. So the god prevented them from ever reaching home. Tell me, too, about all these things, O daughter of Jove, from whatsoever source you may know them. So now all who escaped death in battle or by shipwreck had got safely home, except Ulysses, and he, though he was longing to return to his wife and country, was detained by the goddess Calypso, who had got him into a large cave and wanted to marry him. But as years went by, there came a time when the gods settled that he should go back to Ithaca. Even then, however, when he was among his own people, his troubles were not yet over. Nevertheless, all the gods had now begun to pity him, except Neptune, who still persecuted him without ceasing and would not let him go home. All right, I want to say something here. It's important because modern girls, especially neo-pagans, think that Jove, Zeus, is the ultimate bad guy. Then he's the ultimate philanderer, and he's the ultimate provocateur or advocate for marital infidelity. But Jove has just gathered up all of the gods and said that we need to let Odysseus go home. We need to let him leave. This Calypso is trying to marry him. It's a problem. And so here's the thing. It's been years, right, that he's there. And so wanted to marry him is a euphemism for was using him sexually. Continuing on. So like all of these girls who are like, oh, Calypso is just, oh, he's married to Persephone and he loves her more than me. That is not what you are about to find in this book. What has happened is that she has chained him to her bed and is using him at night and lets him leave to weep during the day. Very different story than what women want to read. Continuing on. Now Neptune had gone off to the Ethiopians who were at the world's end and lie in two halves, the one looking west and the other east. He had gone there to accept a hecatomb of sheep and oxen and was enjoying himself at his festival. But the other gods met in the house of Olympian Jove, and the sire of gods and men spoke first. At that moment he was thinking of Aegisthus, who had been killed by Agamemnon's son Orestes. So he said to the other gods, See now how men lay blame upon us gods for what is after all nothing but their own folly. Look at Aegisthus. He must needs make love to Agamemnon's wife unrighteously and then kill Agamemnon, though he knew it would be the death of him. For I sent Mercury to warn him not to do either of these things, inasmuch as Orestes would be sure to take his revenge when he grew up and wanted to return home. Mercury told him this in all good will, but he would not listen, and now he is paid for everything in full. Yeah, so Zeus here, he's advocating righteous behavior in marriage. Then Minerva said, Father, son of Saturn, king of kings, it served Aegisthus right, and so it would anyone else who does as he did. But Aegisthus is neither here nor there. It is for Ulysses, Odysseus, that my heart bleeds when I think of his sufferings in that lonely sea-girt island far away, poor man, from all of his friends. It is an island covered with forest in the very middle of the sea, and a goddess lives there, daughter of the magician Atlas, who looks after the bottom of the ocean and carries the great columns that keep heaven and earth asunder. This daughter of Atlas has got hold of poor unhappy Ulysses and keeps trying by every kind of blandishment to make him forget his home, so that he is tired of life and thinks of nothing but how he may once more see the smoke of his own chimneys. You, sir, take no heed of this. And yet when Ulysses was before Troy, did he not propitiate you with many a burnt sacrifice? Why then should you keep on being so angry with him? And Jove said, My child, what are you talking about? How can I forget Ulysses? How can I forget Ulysses, than whom there is no more capable man on earth, nor more liberal in his offerings to the immortal gods that live in heaven? Bear in mind, however, that Neptune is still furious with Ulysses for having blinded an eye of Polyphemus, king of the Cyclopes. Polyphemus is son to Neptune by the nymph Thusa, daughter to the sea king Phorcys. Therefore, though he will not kill Ulysses outright, he torments him by preventing him from getting home. Still, let us lay our heads together and see how we can help him to return. Neptune will then be pacified, for if we are all of a mind, he can hardly stand out against us. And Minerva said, Father, son of Saturn, king of kings, if then the gods now mean that Ulysses should get home, we should first send Mercury to Ogygian Island to tell Calypso that we have made up our minds and that he is to return. In the meantime, I will go to Ithaca to put heart into Ulysses' son Telemachus. I will embolden him to call the Achaeans in assembly and speak out to the suitors of his mother Penelope, who persist in eating up any number of his sheep and oxen. I will also conduct him to Sparta and to Pylos, and to see if he can hear anything about the return of his dear father, for this will make people speak well of him. So saying, she bound on her glittering golden sandals, imperishable, with which she can fly like the wind over land or sea. That makes me think that's probably Nike. She grasped the redoubtable bronze-shod spear, so stout and sturdy and strong, wherewith she quells the ranks of heroes who have displeased her, and down she departed from the topmost summits of Olympus. Whereon, forthwith, she was in Ithaca, at the gateway of Ulysses' house, disguised as a visitor, Mentes, chief of the Taphians, and she held a bronze spear in her hand. There she found the lordly suitors seated on hides of the oxen which they had killed and eaten, and playing draughts in front of the house. Men servants and pages were bustling about to wait upon them, some mixing wine with water in the mixing bowls, some cleaning down the tables with wet sponges and laying them out again, and some cutting up great quantities of meat. I want to interrupt here, because I don't want to read the Telemachy, and so this is probably about the Telemachy. I'm probably going to stop here, because the character I don't want to read is the very next word, Telemachus. What I want to talk to you about is hospitality, okay? And so what she was just describing, did that sound familiar to you? I know it probably sounds to you like a noble person's house in like the 18th century, or a rich person's home now, right? Lots of servants, like people keeping the house clean, right? It's what it probably sounded like to you. And that's really not a bad way to think about it. It's really not a bad way to conceptualize what's happening here. But the reason that these people, this family, this rich family, this woman and her inheritor son who hasn't come of age yet, who's I don't want to talk about. It's important because she has something like 100 people in her home that she has to entertain. It's more like a restaurant. These rich people's homes, they were more like restaurants in this era, in the Iron Age. This is actually casting back to the conflict that resulted in the late Bronze Age collapse of the Mediterranean and the Mediterranean Dark Ages. Homer was writing toward the end of the Dark Age as civilization was coming back together. Homer also wasn't writing. This is an oral tradition that was then written down many hundreds of years after it was completed. And Homer is probably not one person. All of that said, I'm moving on because we've talked about the setup that I want. Okay, all things being Shaggy, I'm actually not going to start at book 5. We're actually going to start toward the end of book 4 because book 4, the end of book 4, is relative not to what I want to talk about in this book, but actually relative to what I've been showing you and how I plan to conclude my reading of Phaedrus. More importantly, it allows us to chase Derrida in a specific way, because the essay I'm going to read for you, Plato's Pharmacon, is about the psychedelics and other drugs of the ancient world, and I'm anticipating that it's also about religious rites. And so one of the things that modern feminists frequently get wrong, and that the women who love this musical are getting wrong about this woman, Penelope, is, and I know this is true because Gemini AI always gets it wrong, is there's a deeply sexist interpretation of what women were doing in the ancient world as regards religion and their time spent coming out of the mouths of women, deeply denigrating their own gender in this time period. So I'm just going to present it to you, and I'm going to tell you it's beautiful and awesome, and that Penelope is a great character, and that Penelope was not a patriarchal, patristic character, that Penelope was a faithful rendering of what even ancienter religion was like, and what women put on themselves as members of very early human tribes. And if you tip this and you put in your note, like on Cash App or Venmo or PayPal, or you subscribe for minimum $10 to the Patreon. I said I wasn't going to do this again, but I'm trying to give you value for what I am. And you put in the note for the Golden Bough. If I can get enough people to do that, I'll just read the entire Golden Bough for you, and I'll show you where this sexism and racism come from in reading this very book. But all comparative mythology is deeply, deeply sexist and racist as it approaches the mythology coming back to it. And so now I'm going to show you that this is not sexist or patriarchal. Let's continue. From book 4. What happens before this is that the guy that we don't want to talk about, and I don't want in your mind, Telemachus, Ulysses or Odysseus' son, has gone looking for his dad. Hugely bad decision. He's only like 14 or 16 or something, and he's gone looking for his dad. And I've got a hair in my eye, so forgive me while I contend with this. I don't know if you've watched any of my other long forms, but anytime I get to doing something that's difficult and I know contradicts what people who are loud in the comments want to believe, my body starts to have these serious anxiety reactions, and I'm probably manifesting, got that hair, but I'm probably manifesting an allergic response to my hair. Looks nice though, doesn't it? I do not know, answered Medon, whether some god set him to it, or whether he went on his own impulse to see if he could find out if his father was dead, or alive, or on his way home. Then he went downstairs again, leaving Penelope in an agony of grief. There were plenty of seats in the house, but she had no heart for sitting on any one of them. She could only fling herself on the floor of her own room and cry. Now tell me what modern dramatic portrayals of a mother whose husband may or may not be dead and whose son has just wandered off into the wilderness don't have her first response be to throw herself on her bed and just have a really good long cry before she can get her head right. Whereon all the maids in the house, both old and young, gathered round her and began to cry too, till at last, in a transport of sorrow, she exclaimed, "My dears, heaven has been pleased to try me with more affliction than any other woman of my age and country. First I thought my brave and lion-hearted husband, who had every good quality under heaven and whose name was great over all Hellas and middle Argos, and now my darling son is at the mercy of the winds and waves, without my having heard one word about his leaving home. You hussies! There was not one of you would so much as think of giving me a call out of my bed, though you, all of you, very well knew when he was starting. If I had known he meant taking this voyage, he would have had to give it up, no matter how much he was bent upon it, or leave me a corpse behind him. One or other. Now, however, go some of you and call old Dolius, who was given me by my father on my marriage, and who is my gardener. Bid him go at once and tell everything to Laertes, who may be able to hit on some plan for enlisting public sympathy on our side, as against those who are trying to exterminate his own race and that of Ulysses." Then the dear old nurse Eurycleia said, "You may kill me, madam, or let me live on in your house, whichever you please, but I will tell you the real truth. I knew all about it, and gave him everything he wanted in the way of bread and wine, but he made me take my solemn oath that I would not tell you anything for some 10 or 12 days, unless you asked or happened to hear of his having gone, for he did not want you to spoil your beauty by crying. And now, madam, wash your face, change your hands, and go upstairs with your maids to offer prayers to Minerva, daughter of Aegis-bearing Jove, for she can save him, even though he be in the jaws of death. Do not trouble Laertes. He has trouble enough already. Besides, I cannot think that the gods hate, I don't know what he means. I think what he means to say is, besides, I cannot think that the gods hate the race of the son of Archaeus so much, but there will be a son left to come up after him and inherit both the house and the fair fields that lie far all round it. Yeah, there's a slight translator's error here. He says, I think he might have been German, translating into English, or maybe even translating the Latin from the German into English, because here we have, I cannot think the gods hate dia race of the race. I think he meant to say, I think the gods hate the race of the sun. It's all good. I just like little things like that. It shows that I'm not the only person who kind of flubs really important things. With these words, she made her mistress leave off crying and dried the tears from their eyes. Penelope washed her face, changed her dress, and went upstairs with her maids. She then put some bruised barley into a basket and began praying to Minerva. Now, who else has heard of that book, Girl, Clean Your Face? Or Clean Your Face, Girl, or whatever it's called. Hear me, she cried, daughter of Aegis-bearing Jove, unweariable. Okay, do you understand? The Aegis is a shield, right? It's a particular kind of shield. It's also the dome of the sky. And so on some level, like, Zeus is like this, like holding the sky up on one arm. Unweariable because, like, his arm never gets tired. If ever Ulysses, while he was here, burned you fat thigh bones of sheep or heifer, bear it in mind now as in my favor, and save my darling son from the villainy of the suitors. She cried aloud as she spoke, and the goddess heard her prayer. Meanwhile, the suitors were clamorous throughout the covered cloister, and one of them said, The queen is preparing for her marriage with one or other of us. Little does she dream that her son has now been doomed to die. This was what they said, but they did not know what was going to happen. Then Antoninus said, Comrades, let there be no loud talking, lest some of it get carried inside. Let us be up and do that in silence, about which we are all of a mind. He then chose 20 men, and they went down to their ship and to the seaside. They drew the vessel into the water and got her mast and sails inside her. They bound the oars on the thole pins with twisted thongs of leather, all in due course, and spread the white sails aloft, while their fine servants brought them their armor. Then they made the ship fast a little way out, came on shore again, got their suppers, and waited till night should fall. But Penelope lay in her own room upstairs, unable to eat or drink, and wondering whether her brave son would escape or be overpowered by the wicked suitors. Like a lioness, caught in the toils with huntsmen hemming her in on either side, hemming her in on every side. She thought and thought till she sank into a slumber and lay on her bed bereft of thought and motion. Then Minerva bethought her of another matter, and made a vision in the likeness of Penelope's sister, Iphthime, daughter of Icarius, who had married Eumelus and lived in Phere. She told the vision to go to the house of Ulysses and to make Penelope leave off crying. So it came into her room by the hole through which the thong went for pulling the door to, and hovered over her head, saying, And now, I wanna just, for a moment, maybe we have, maybe we haven't, but I have read, not a great deal, but enough 20th century fiction to know that the way that would have been just said in a 20th century novel is, yeah, so you know how women have intuition? Here's that. This is Minerva speaking. You are asleep, Persephone. You are asleep, Penelope. The gods who live at ease will not suffer you to weep and be so sad. Your son has done them no wrong, so he will yet come back to you. Penelope, who was sleeping sweetly at the gates of dreamland, answered, Sister, why have you come here? You do not come very often, but I suppose that is because you live such a long way off. Am I, then, to leave off crying and refrain from all the sad thoughts that torture me? I who have lost my brave and lion-hearted husband, who had every good quality under heaven and whose name was great over all Hellas and Middle Argos, and now my darling son has got off on board a ship, a foolish fellow who has never been used to roughing it, nor to going about among gatherings of men. I am even more anxious about him than about my husband. I am all in a tremble when I think of him, lest something should happen to him, either from the people among whom he is gone, or by sea, for he has many enemies who are plotting against him, and are bent on killing him before he can return home. Then the vision said, Take heart, and be not so much dismayed. There is one gone with him whom many a man would be glad enough to have stand by his side. I mean Minerva. It is she who has compassion upon you, and who has sent me to bear you this message. Then, said Penelope, if you are a god, or have been sent here by divine commission, tell me also about that other unhappy one. Is he still alive, or is he already dead and in the house of Hades? And the vision said, I shall not tell you for certain whether he is alive or dead, and there is no use in idle conversation. Then it vanished through the thong hole of the door, and was dissipated into thin air. Now, okay, so my meta work, if you haven't watched my live that I did yesterday, my long form reading about ghosts in the Middle Ages, one of the things I read from chapter 5, this is chapter 4 of this, one of the things that I left out that's in the earlier pages of Ghosts in the Middle Ages by Jean-Claude Schmitt is that these people who were recording these ghost stories were adamant to record whether they were in a waking or in a sleeping state, okay? And so I don't know if it's going through your mind as you're hearing this story, and I know you would rather I get back to it, but I don't know if it's going through your mind, but what's going through my mind is Mary, the Virgin Mother. Meantime, the suitors went on board and sailed their ways over the sea, intent on murdering Telemachus. Now there is a rocky islet called Asteris, of no great size, in mid-channel between Ithaca and Samos, and there is a harbor on either side of it where a ship can lie. Here, then, the Achaeans placed themselves in ambush. End Book 5. That was important just for the ghost story, frankly. Just for the encounter with the god. The vision that allowed her to have an intuition that everything was going to work out okay and to be patient. That's important to this story, but how many women do you know? I've known so many. And we call it, speaking good into being or whatever, but I don't believe that's what Penelope was doing here. I'm going to call her Persephone every time. Book 5. And now, as Dawn, capitalized as a goddess, rose from her couch beside Tithonus, harbinger of light alike to mortals and immortals, the gods met in council, and with them Jove, the lord of thunder, who is their king. Thereon Minerva began to tell them of the many sufferings of Ulysses, for she pitied him away there in the house of the nymph Calypso. Now, I'm not sure what the Therion there means, but it probably means something like messenger. Actually, I bet you I'm totally wrong about that. Sorry, it got warm in here. I had to strip out of my top layer. Maybe this will become strip reading. Like, the warmer it gets and the longer I can justify it if I were live, maybe I just strip out of all my layers. You don't know. I may or may not be bottomless in here. Anyway, now that I've turned all the ladies off, that Therion most certainly doesn't mean whatever I said it does. It's probably a similar word to what we say with theory. So anyway, Minerva is telling all of the sufferings of Ulysses now. In the house of Calypso. Give me just a moment. I'm suddenly having indigestion that's turned into burps. Ugh, there we go. Continuing. Minerva, speaking to Jove. Father Jove, said she, and all you other gods that live in everlasting bliss, I hope there may never be such a thing as a kind and well-disposed ruler any more, nor one who will govern equitably. I hope they will be all henceforth cruel and unjust, for there is not one of his subjects, but has forgotten Ulysses, who ruled them as though he were their father. Now it's important here that we pause for a moment and remember that this is probably Nike, right? And this is probably like a prophesying version of Nike. And so what Homer is saying is that subsequent to the late Bronze Age collapse, war is a serious problem. And because nobody remembers that Odysseus won the Trojan War with ingenuity and war machines and not mass slaughter on the battlefield, all of these kings are going to be dickbags unless Odysseus gets off this island, is the argument she's making. There he is, lying in great pain in an island where dwells the nymph Calypso, who will not let him go. And he cannot get back to his own country, for he can find neither ships nor sailors to take him over the sea. We're talking about nostos. Furthermore, wicked people are now trying to murder his only son Telemachus, who is coming home from Pylos and Lacedaemon, Sparta, where he has been to see if he can get news of his father. "What, my dear, are you talking about?" replied her father. "Did you not send him there yourself because you thought it would help Ulysses to get home and punish the suitors? Besides, you are perfectly able to protect Telemachus and to see him safely home again, while the suitors have to come hurry-scurrying back without having killed him." When he had thus spoken, he said to his son Mercury, "Mercury, you are our messenger. Go, therefore, and tell Calypso we have decreed that poor Ulysses is to return home. He is to be convoyed neither by gods nor men, but after a perilous voyage of 20 days upon a raft, he is to reach fertile Scheria, the land of the Phaeacians, who are near of kin to the gods, and will honor him as though he were one of ourselves." And now he's talking about hospitality. So he's sending him to Nostos, and the way he's going to arrive at Nostos is through hospitality, which is called xenia, Xenia. Because they're going to honor him as one of themselves, right? They're going to treat him with respect and feed him as an honored guest, as though, like, you've heard the mythology of, like, treat every homeless person like he might be Jesus because you don't know when he actually is. They will send him in a ship to his own country and will give him more bronze and gold and raiment than he would have brought back from Troy if he had had all his prize money and had gone home without disaster. This is how we have settled that he shall return to his country and his friends. So while Minerva was gone, the other gods agreed that they've already settled the issue. Thus he spoke, and Mercury, guide and guardian, slayer of Argus, did as he was told. Forthwith he bound on his glittering golden sandals, with which he could fly like the wind over land and sea. He took the wand with which he seals men's eyes in sleep or wakes them, just as he pleases, and flew, holding it in his hands, over Pieria. Then he swooped down through the firmament till he reached the level of the sea, whose waves he skimmed like a cormorant that flies fishing every hole and corner of the ocean, drenching its thick plumage in the spray. He flew and flew over many a weary wave, but when at last he got to the island which was his journey's end, he left the sea and went on by land till he came to the cave where the nymph Calypso lived. He found her at home. There was a large fire burning on the hearth, and one could smell from far the fragrant reek of burning cedar and sandalwood. Not for nothing, but those are sacred woods. I don't know in what way they're sacred, but those oils are used in shit today, especially perfumes. They smell good. As for herself, Calypso was busy at her loom, shooting her golden shuttle through the warp and singing beautifully. Round her cave there was a thick wood of alder, poplar, and sweet-smelling cypress trees, wherein all kinds of great birds had built their nests. And you notice that cedar and sandal are not listed among the woods nearby. Owls, hawks, and chattering sea crows that occupy their business in the water. A vine loaded with grapes was trained and grew luxuriantly about the mouth of the cave. There were also 4 running rills of water in channels cut pretty close together and turned hither and thither so as to irrigate the beds of violets and luscious herbage over which they flowed. Even a god could not help being charmed with such a lovely spot, so Mercury stood still and looked at it. But when he had admired it sufficiently, he went inside the cave. Calypso knew him at once, for the gods all know each other, no matter how far they live from one another. But Ulysses was not within. He was on the seashore, as usual, looking out upon the barren ocean with tears in his eyes, groaning and breaking his heart for sorrow. Calypso gave Mercury a seat and said, "Why have you come to see me, Mercury, honored and ever welcome, for you do not visit me often? Say what you want, I will do it, for be you at once if I can, and if I can be done at all. If it can be done at all. But come inside, and let me set refreshment for you." As she spoke, she drew a table loaded with ambrosia beside him and mixed him some red nectar. So Mercury ate and drank till he had had enough, and then said, "We are speaking god and goddess to one another, and you ask me, why have I come here? And I will tell you truly, as you would have me do. Jove sent me. It was no doing of mine. Who could possibly want to come all this way over the sea, where there are no cities full of people to offer me sacrifices or choice hecatombs? Nevertheless I have come, for none of us other gods can cross Jove, nor transgress his orders. He says that you have here the most ill-starred of those who fought 9 years before the city of King Priam, and sailed home in the 10th year after having sacked it. On their way home they sinned against Minerva, who raised both wind and waves against them, so that all his brave companions perished, and he alone was carried hither by wind and tide. Jove says that you are to let this man go at once, for it is decreed that he shall not perish here, far from his own people, but shall return to his house and country to see his friends again." Calypso trembled with rage when she heard this. "You gods," she exclaimed, ought to be ashamed of yourselves. You are always jealous and hate seeing a goddess take a fancy to a mortal man and live with him in open matrimony. So when rosy-fingered Dawn made love to Orion, you precious gods were all of you furious till Diana went and killed him in Ortygia. So again when Ceres fell in love with Jason, that's probably Jason, and yielded to him a thrice plowed fallow field, Jove came to hear of it before so long and killed Jason with his thunderbolts. And now you are angry with me too, because I have a man here. I found the poor creature sitting all alone astride of a keel, for Jove had struck his ship with lightning and sunk it in mid-ocean, so that all his crew were drowned, while he himself was driven by wind and waves onto my island. I got hold of him and cherished him, and had set my heart on making him immortal, so that he should never grow old all his days. Still I cannot cross Jove, nor bring his counsels to nothing. Therefore, if he insists upon it, let the man go beyond the seas again. But I cannot send him anywhere myself, for I have neither ships nor men who can take him. Nevertheless, I will readily give him such advice, in all good faith, as will be likely to bring him safely to his own country." "Then send him away," said Mercury, "or Jove will be angry with you and punish you." On this he took his leave, and Calypso went out to look for Ulysses, for she had heard Jove's message. She found him sitting upon the beach with his eyes ever filled with tears and dying of sheer homesickness, for he had got tired of Calypso, and though he was forced to sleep with her in the cave by night, it was she, not he, that would have it so. As for the daytime, he spent it on the rocks and on the seashore, weeping, crying aloud for his despair, and always looking out upon the sea. Calypso then went close up to him and said, but before that, we do understand that Calypso is like a proto-mermaid, right? Like, so we understand, like, the mermaid mythology or, like, siren mythology, that, like, Calypso is the same kind of thing, right? She doesn't need consent. She has, like, magical compulsion. So, like, you know how vampires don't, like, really get consent? They, like, kind of, like, thrive on having it. And, like, how that's, like, what those books Twilight are about. Or, like, kind of, like, that's why 50 Shades is a fanfic of that dynamic. There's a reason that women write these books in the way they do. And I'm not denigrating that. I'm saying that Homer established a pattern. And if Homer's a man and he established a pattern that women like to read, then that means there's something universal about this story. And fundamentally changing the dynamic between these characters ruins them and makes your adaptation bad, no matter how catchy and modern your songs are. Just find a good translation and edit it so that it rhymes in English. dickhead. My poor fellow, Calypso says, you shall not stay here grieving and fretting your life out any longer. I am going to send you away of my own free will. So go, cut some beams of wood and make yourself a large raft with an upper deck that it may carry you safely over the sea. I will put bread, wine, and water on board to save you from starving. I will also give you clothes, and will send you a fair wind to take you home, if the gods in heaven so will it, for they know more about these things and can settle them better than I can. There, I did. It's like kind of his version of Calypso. Ulysses shuddered as he heard her. Now, goddess, he answered, there is something behind all this. You cannot be really meaning to help me go home when you bid me do such a dreadful thing as put to sea on a raft. Not even a well-found ship with a fair wind could venture on such a distant voyage. Nothing that you can say or do shall make me go on board a raft unless you first solemnly swear that you mean me no mischief. Calypso smiled at this and caressed him with her hand. You know a great deal, said she, but you are quite wrong here. May heaven above and earth below be my witnesses with the waters of the river Styx. And this is the most solemn oath which a blessed God can take, that I mean you no sort of harm, and am only advising you to do exactly what I should do myself in your place. I am dealing with you quite straightforwardly. My heart is not made of iron, and I am very sorry for you. Okay, so the earth below and the waters of the river Styx is her solemn vow. Basically, she's saying, like, may I die. Like, I'm swearing on my immortality here. Come on, like, work with me. When she had thus spoken, she led the way rapidly before him, and Ulysses followed in her steps. So the pair, goddess and man, went on till they came to Calypso's cave, where Ulysses took the seat that Mercury had just left. Calypso set meat and drink before him of the food that mortals eat, but her maids brought ambrosia and nectar for herself, and they laid their hands on the good things that were before them. And so if you just heard my reading of Phaedrus and you're like, well, what's the significance of the ambrosia and the nectar that the horses drink? It's the food of the gods. That's what they subsist on. When they had satisfied themselves with meat and drink, Calypso spoke, saying, Ulysses, noble son of Laertes, so you would start home to your own land at once? Good luck go with you. But if you could only know how much suffering is in store for you before you get back to your own country, you would stay where you are. Keep house along with me, and let me make you immortal. No matter how anxious you may be to see this wife of yours, of whom you are thinking all the time, day after day, yet I flatter myself that I am at no whit less tall or well-looking than she is, for it is not to be expected that a mortal woman should compare in beauty with an immortal. Goddess, replied Ulysses, do not be angry with me about this. I am quite aware that my wife Penelope is nothing like so tall or so beautiful as yourself. She is only a woman, whereas you are an immortal. Nevertheless, I want to go home and can think of nothing else. If some god wrecks me when I am on the sea, I will bear it, and I make the best of it. I have had infinite trouble both by land and sea already, so let this go with the rest. Presently the sun set, and it became dark, whereon the pair retired into the inner part of the cave and went to bed. Can you hear my bunny friend coming to investigate me? When the child of morning, rosy-fingered dawn, appeared, Ulysses put on his shirt and cloak, while the goddess wore a dress of a light gossamer fabric, very fine and graceful, with a beautiful golden girdle around her waist, and a veil to cover her head. She at once set herself to think how she could speed Ulysses on his way. So she gave him a great bronze axe that suited his hands. It was sharpened on both sides and had a beautiful olive wood handle fitted firmly onto it. She also gave him a sharp adze, and then led the way to the far end of the island where the largest trees grew, alder, poplar, and pine, that reached the sky, very dry and well seasoned, so as to sail light for him in the water. Then, when she had shown him where the best trees grew, Calypso went home, leaving him to cut them, which he soon finished doing. I want to interject here for a moment. When she says, I'm thinking of the best way to help you sail home. Here's an axe. I'm thinking, You bitch! But I forgot he still has to make the raft. He cut down 20 trees in all and adds them smooth. The adds, too. I'm like, what the fuck is that? How is... I think an adds is like a planing tool. Okay. He cut them down 20 trees in all and adds them smooth, squaring them by rule in good workmanlike fashion. Meanwhile, Calypso came back with some augers, so he bored holes with them and fitted the timbers together with bolts and rivets. It's interesting that a woman who lives in a cave has woodworking tools, but hey, she's a goddess. He made the raft as broad as a skilled shipwright makes the beam of a large vessel, and he filled a deck on top of the ribs and ran a gunwale all round it. This is not a raft. This is a boat. He also made a mast with a yard arm and a rudder to steer with. He fenced the raft all round with wicker hurdles as a protection against the waves, and then he threw on a quantity of wood. See, I was thinking something more like, what is it, Pie and Me or something? The movie/book about the kid who's on a raft with a lion, tiger. Those are different animals. I know the difference. I just said the wrong one. Continuing. By and by, Calypso brought him some linen to make the sails, and he made these too, excellently, making them fast with braces and sheets. Last of all, with the help of levers, he drew the raft down into the water. Now, I don't know if Homer's primary goal here is to articulate to the future that they had complex machinery in the Iron Age, but, well done. In 4 days he had completed the whole work, and on the 5th, Calypso sent him from the island after washing him and giving him some clean clothes. That means, one last boop boop. She gave him a goat skin full of black wine, and another larger one of water. She also gave, the black wine probably means unwatered wine. She also gave him a wallet full of provisions and found him in much good meat. Moreover, she made the wind fair and warm for him, and gladly did Ulysses spread his sail before it, while he sat and glided the raft skillfully by means of the rudder. He never closed his eyes, but kept them fixed on the Pleiades, the constellation, the 9 sisters, on late-setting Bootes, Bootes, and on the Bear. That's probably, Ursa Major, the North Star, which men also call the Wain, and which turns round and round where it is, facing Orion, and alone, never dipping into the stream of Oceanus. For Calypso had told him to keep this to his left. I read something recently, and this is just between you and me. It has nothing to do with anything, and they were talking about the significance of a prophecy that included the bear chasing the hunter related to Orion, and the author of the thing I was reading completely missed Ursa and Orion, and here, even Homer knows that Ursa Major chases Orion in the northern hemisphere sky, in particular during the winter. I watched it every night outside my tent for the winter. For Calypso had told him to keep this to his left. Days 7 and 10 did he sail over the sea, and on the 18th the dim outlines of the mountains on the nearest part of the Phaeacian coast appeared, rising like a shield on the horizon. And so if you've ever wondered exactly how they navigated the sky, when people, like in documentaries, they say, oh yeah, they use the stars to navigate the sky, and they never give you the how. I'm always like, how? How? Well, if the Pleiades and the North Star are always on your left, they're always oriented left of your center, then you are going, my friend, east. Yep. If north is always to your left, if it's always left of your center axis, you are going east. And that's what this just tells us. And this tells us the how he knew to sail east. Because what Homer could have said is, and he sailed east. That's nice and efficient. And his audience may or may not know how. But Homer knows how he did it. And so if Homer is doing anything, he's patting himself on the back for knowing how to build a boat, for asking around, how do you build a boat? And for knowing how to sail east. Something that maybe everybody knew. But Homer definitely knows it, and he wants you to know that he knows it by spending a lot of words on it. Days 7 and 10 did he sail over the sea, and on the 18th, the dim outlines of the mountains on the nearest part of the Phaeacian coast appeared, rising like a shield on the horizon. This suggests to me that he found places to sleep during the day, islands to sleep on, places to nestle his boat, except for on day 7 and 10. He was able to sail. He had to sail all the way through. And the reason is not obvious. The reason is sunburn. You don't want to be blistered in the sun that you can't hide from, even under your sail. Noon would be a fucking nightmare on a boat in the summer, whenever, on the Mediterranean. It'd be a fucking nightmare. It'd kill you. But King Neptune, who was returning from the Ethiopians, caught sight of Ulysses a long way off, from the mountains of the Solymi. He could see him sailing upon the sea, and it made him very angry. So he wagged his head and muttered to himself, saying, "Heavens, so the gods have been changing their minds about Ulysses." Oh, sorry, this is not end quotes and should be, so let's start over. Saying, "Heavens, so the gods have been changing their minds about Ulysses while I was away in Ethiopia." Wait a minute, this is Poseidon, isn't it? Yes, it is. Sorry. Let's read that whole paragraph again. Forgive me my error. But King Neptune, who was returning from the Ethiopians, caught sight of Ulysses a long way off, from the mountains of the Solymi. Poseidon could see Ulysses sailing upon the sea, and it made Poseidon very angry. So Poseidon wagged his head and muttered to himself, saying, "Heavens, so the gods have been changing their minds about Ulysses while I was away in Ethiopia, and now he is close to the land of the Phaeacians, where it is decreed that he shall escape from the calamities that have befallen him. Still, he shall have plenty of hardship yet before he has done with it." Thereon, when I said Therion Minerva earlier, that's not a classification of Minerva. What I should have said is, thereon. Old ways of speaking. Thereon he gathered his clouds together, that is, Poseidon, grasped his trident, stirred it round in the sea, and roused the rage of every wind that blows till earth, sea, and sky were hidden in cloud. Night sprang forth out of the heavens. Hurricanes are rare in the Mediterranean today. I don't know if they were less rare back then, but they are rare today, so saith Google when I Googled that like a decade ago. But doesn't this make you think of Little Mermaid? Winds from east, south, north, and west fell upon him all at the same time, and a tremendous sea got up so that Ulysses' heart began to fail him. "Alas," he said to himself in his dismay, "whatever will become of me? I am afraid Calypso was right when she said I should have trouble by sea before I got back home. It is all coming true. How black is Jove making heaven with his clouds, and what a sea the winds are raising from every quarter at once. I am now safe to perish. Blessed and thrice blessed were those Danaans who fell before Troy in the cause of the sons of Atreus. Would that had been killed on the day when the Trojans were pressing me so sorely about the dead body of Achilles. For then I should have had due burial, and the Achaeans would have honored my name. But now it seems that I shall come to a most pitiable end." Yeah, he wants to be buried. He doesn't want to die at sea. He don't want to go to Davy Jones' locker. As he spoke, a sea broke over him with such terrific fury that the raft reeled again, and he was carried overboard a long way off. He let go the helm, and the force of the hurricane was so great that it broke the mast halfway up, and both sail and yard went over into the sea. For a long time, Ulysses was under water, and it was all he could do to rise to the surface again. For the clothes Calypso had given him weighed him down. But at last, he got his head above water and spat out the bitter brine that was running down his face in streams. In spite of all this, however, he did not lose sight of his raft, but swam as fast as he could towards it, got hold of it, and climbed on board again so as to escape drowning. Thank God, this story doesn't become being jettisoned in space. Because, like in a motorboat, if you get jettisoned from the motorboat, it's basically, you're in outer space. The sea took the raft and tossed it about as autumn winds whirl thistledown, round and round upon a road. It was as though the south, north, east, and west winds were all playing battledore and shuttlecock with it at once. I don't know what battledore is. Isn't shuttlecock shuttleboard? When he was in this plight, Ino, daughter of Cadmus, also called Leucothea, saw him. She had formerly been a mere mortal, but had been since raised to the rank of a marine goddess. Seeing in what great distress Ulysses now was, she had compassion upon him, and, rising like a seagull from the waves, took her seat upon the raft. Doesn't this make you think of another kind of mermaid story? Doesn't this think you of like the Little Mermaid? Doesn't this think you? Yes! Reading this antique language does make me speak in this antique idiom. Doesn't this think you is how it would have been said in older versions of English. But anyway, doesn't this make you think of like the Little Mermaid? Doesn't this whole scene make you think of the Little Mermaid? It makes me think of the Little Mermaid. It makes me think that maybe virgins who died at sea became this kind of marine goddess. It's probably got a name. The translator probably made it the name marine goddess, but it's probably like a nymph or something, a particular kind of nymph, like a sea nymph. It probably actually says sea nymph, because other translations I've read of the Calypso scene call Calypso a nymph, not a goddess, but they're the same thing in that language. "My poor good man," said she, "why is Neptune so furiously angry with you? He is giving you a great deal of trouble, but for all his bluster he will not kill you. You seem to be a sensible person. Do then as I bid you. Strip, leave your raft to drive before the wind, and swim to the Phaeacian coast, where better luck awaits you. And here, take my veil and put it round your chest. It is enchanted, and you can come to no harm so long as you wear it. As long as you touch land, take it off. Throw it back as far as you can into the sea, and then go away again." And that has me thinking of Arrested Development, Job trying to throw that letter into the ocean. With these words, she took off her veil and gave it to him. Then she dived down again like a seagull and vanished beneath the dark blue waters. The veil situation definitely makes me think of a virgin, a maiden of some sort, a virtuous maiden, probably like a Vestal type maiden. And we don't need to get into that, but appropriate for Phaedrus. And an essay that I read today about something. Maybe even this. Anyway, but Ulysses did not know what to think. "Alas," he said to himself in his dismay, this is only some one or other of the gods who is luring me to my ruin by advising me to will quit my raft." Will means something other than decide. Basically what he's saying is I'll say it again. This is only some one or other. This is only some one or other of the gods, the alliteration can be very annoying on the tongue, who is luring me to my ruin by advising me to determine to quit my raft. At any rate, I will not do so at present, for the land where she said I should be quit of all my troubles seemed to be still a good way off. I know what I will do. I am sure it will be best. No matter what happens, I will stick to the raft as long as her timbers hold together. But when the sea breaks her up, I will swim for it. I do not see how I can do any better than this. And so what he could have said here at the end there is, but when the sea breaks her up, I will swim for it, in the context of the earlier syntax. While he was thus in two minds, Neptune sent a terrible great wave that seemed to rear itself above his head till it broke right over the raft, which then went to pieces, as though it were a heap of dry chaff tossed about by a whirlwind. I want to say something here. We're attributing We're attributing Poseidon to the cause here of the effect, right? Because we don't have Aristotle yet to tell us about cause and effect, and we don't have the 2,000 years, 2,500 years of science that we have today. But what they're not doing is then going, and that guy's a dickhead for it. And so, like, the people who are like, Zeus was a philanderer and a dickhead for it, were a tiny majority of thinkers in history, and all of them were inspired by Plato's version of Socrates. None fewer than those who had read Phaedrus. So all of this, all of it still matters. Don't let parts 1 and 2 fall all the way from your mind. I'm not asking you to memorize them. I'm just saying don't forget that this is sequentially in line with the Phaedrus and my reading of that. While Ulysses was thus in two minds, Neptune sent a terrible great wave that seemed to rear itself above his head till it broke right over the raft, which then went to pieces as though it were a heap of dry chaff tossed about by a whirlwind. I also want to cut in one more time. Have you ever had that happen to you? Have you ever had a supernatural experience? I've had lots of supernatural experiences. I have no intention to really talk about mine all the time because I recorded it in the 10-hour, 5-episode podcast I've titled Book 1. Okay? I talk about it at length for multiple hours in that. And so I don't have any intention to talk about it in detail here. But Mr. S, should you choose to watch this, and thank you for your continued support, even as your life requires you to do you and focus on you. Do that. Ulysses is in the middle of a turbulent sea, and what he's not thinking about is his son and his wife. He's not going, oh, if I die here, let their lives continue well. He's saying, fuck, let me live. Okay. Supernatural experiences often are that moment where you're like, it can't get any worse. And then it gets worse. Or that wouldn't happen right now. And then it happens right now. Often the thinking about it is what makes it happen. And so Homer just beautifully captures that in prose, and I like it. And so this isn't like you're in a shitty situation, but at least it's not raining, and then somebody says, it just could not get any worse, and then it starts raining. Like, that's not this. He goes, when I'm too far away from that thing that's challenging to me, this God has just told me that right now, this moment, I need to bail and do that. I don't want to do that yet. I'm going to write this out as long as I can. But when I can no longer write it out, then I'll do the thing that God just told me to do. And then the God that's in charge of that God smashes the thing so that he has to do the thing that the God has determined he's going to do. Do you see what I'm saying? That's how will works. And that's how a conflict of will between a human and a God works. While he was thus of two minds, Ulysses got astride of one plank and rode upon it, as if he were on horseback. He then took off the clothes Calypso had given him, bound Ino's veil under his arms, and plunged into the sea, meaning to swim on shore. King Neptune watched him as he did so, and wagged his head, muttering to himself and saying, "There now, swim up and down as best you can till you fall in with well-to-do people. I do not think you will be able to say that I have left you off too lightly." On this, he lashed his horses and drove to Aegea, where his palace is. Can't you just hear the Saturday cartoon villain of it all? There now! Right? It's great. I'm not putting that much into it. You guys don't pay me that much. But Minerva resolved to help Ulysses. So she bound the ways of all the winds except one, and made them lie quite still. But she roused a good stiff breeze from the north, that should lay the waters till Ulysses reached the land of the Phaeacians, where he would be safe. And now I want to say something while I strip off this shirt, so just fucking cope. I was talking with Gemini the other day that it's not obvious why Zeus and Poseidon stick around together after the Indo-European mother culture becomes fully Greek. It's not obvious why, because Zeus isn't he's not the patriarch, he's not the primary deity of the Mycenaeans or the Minoans. from whom Greek as we know it, the Greek of Homer, developed. The Iliad is about a conflict over, or including Mycenaean Greeks. I think it's the Mycenaeans who win. I could be wrong. I always get the Minoans are much earlier, I think. I always get the timeline on the Mycenaeans and the Minoans wrong because it was presented to me wrong in my freshman honors history course. The 6 weeks I went to university. And when I realized that she had written the textbook and that the names were wrong, I dropped out of school entirely. You can be a professor, you can teach an honors course and write the textbook that I had to buy to supplement your income, and you can be wrong. It just really did not jive with me. Okay, so Therion. Hey, maybe that can be a running joke. Every time I see thereon, I can pronounce it wrong, and we can put it on a T-shirt, and we can put a cartoon with it, and that can be like a joke. Thereon, Ulysses floated for 2 nights and 2 days in the water, with a heavy swell on the sea and death staring him in the face. But when the 3rd day broke, the wind fell, and there was a dead calm without so much as a breath of air stirring. As he rose on the swell, he looked eagerly ahead and could see land quite near. Then, as children rejoice when their dear father begins to get better after having for a long time borne sore affliction, been sick, sent him by some angry spirit, but the god delivered him from evil, so was Ulysses thankful when he again saw land and trees, and swam on with all his strength that he might once more set foot upon dry ground. When, however, he got within earshot, he began to hear the surf thundering up against the rocks, for the swell still broke against them with a terrific roar. Everything was enveloped in spray. There were no harbors where a ship might ride, nor shelter of any kind, but only headlands, low-lying rocks, and mountain tops. Ulysses' heart now began to fail him, and he said despairingly to himself, "Alas, Jove has let me see land after swimming so far that I had given up all hope. But I can find no landing place, for the coast is rocky and surf-beaten. The rocks are smooth and rise sheer from the sea, with deep water close under them, so that I cannot climb out for want of foothold. I am afraid some great wave will lift me off my legs and dash me against the rocks, so I leave the water, which would give me a sorry landing. If, on the other hand, I swim further in search of some shelving beach or harbor, a hurricane may carry me out to sea again, sorely against my will, or heaven may send some great monster of the deep to attack me. For Amphitrite, I don't know that word, breeds many such, and I know that Neptune is very angry with me." While he was thus in 2 minds, a wave caught him and took him with such force against the rocks that he would have been smashed and torn to pieces if Minerva had not shown him what to do. And so, you want to talk about struggling with, the Christian God and having a relationship with the Christian God? Imagine interpreting bad events in your life being God mad at you. Not that you've sinned, just that you annoyed God. Like you asked God for something that annoyed him, and so he dropped a fucking hurricane on you. Imagine that. Just imagine that you led to the destruction of a god's city, and so now it's chasing you with hurricanes. This is the scale of what Homer is putting Odysseus through in this narrative. While he was thus in 2 minds, a wave caught him and took him with such force against the rocks that he would have been smashed and torn to pieces if Minerva had not shown him what to do. And now, the of 2 minds here doesn't mean that I share simultaneous opinions and I can't reconcile them. That's not what of 2 minds here means. Of 2 minds means he's talking to himself and listening back to himself. He's 2 souls. He's of 2 souls. That's important to Phaedrus. He caught hold of the rock with both hands and clung to it, groaning with pain till the wave retired, and so he was saved that time. But presently the wave came on again and carried him back with it far into the sea, tearing his hands as the suckers of a polypus are torn when one plucks it from its bed, and the stones come along with it. Even so did the rocks tear the skin from his strong hands, and then the wave drew him deep down under the water. Here poor Ulysses would have certainly perished, even in spite of his own destiny, if Minerva had not helped him to keep his wits about him. He swam seaward again, beyond reach of the surf that was beating against the land, and at the same time he kept looking towards the shore, to see if he could find some haven, or a spit that should take the waves aslant. By and by, as he swam on, he came to the mouth of a river, and there he thought would be the best place, for there were no rocks, and it afforded shelter from the wind. He felt that there was a current, so he prayed inwardly and said, "Hear me, O king, whoever you may be, and save me from the anger of the sea god Neptune, for I approach you prayerfully." Now here's the thing, and this is why I say that it's important that that you understand that modern people don't understand Zeus. Because when he says, "Hear me, O king," he means Zeus. He means Jove, right? He means Jove. But the thing is that every island, every group of people had a different relationship with a different Jove that had a slightly different name. And so when he says, "Whoever you may be, whichever version of Zeus this is, fucking help me. For I approach you prayerfully." That means begging. Anyone who has lost his way has at all times a claim even upon the gods. Wherefore in my distress I draw near to your stream and cling to the knees of your riverhood. Have mercy upon me, O king, for I declare myself your suppliant. I can remember that moment in my life. Then the god stayed his stream and stilled the waves, making all calm before him, and bringing him safely into the mouth of the river. Here at last Ulysses' knees and strong hands failed him, for the sea had completely broken him. His body was all swollen, and his mouth and nostrils ran down like a river with sea water, so that he could neither breathe nor speak, and lay swooning from sheer exhaustion. Presently, when he had got his breath and came to himself again, he took off the scarf that Ino had given him and threw it back into the salt stream of the river. Whereon Ino received it into her hands from the wave that bore it towards her. Then he left the river, laid himself down among the rushes, and kissed the bounteous earth. "Alas," he cried to himself in his dismay, "whatever will come of me, and how is it all to end? If I stay here upon the riverbed through the long watches of the night, I am so exhausted that the bitter cold and damp may make an end of me. For towards sunrise there will be a keen wind blowing from off the river. If, on the other hand, I climb the hillside, find shelter in the woods, and sleep in some thicket, I may escape the cold and have a good night's rest, but some savage beast may take advantage of me and devour me." Whoops. Accidentally moved the page, and it is gone forever. In the end, he deemed it best to take to the woods, and he found up upon some high ground not far from the water. There he crept beneath 2 shoots of olive that grew from a single stalk, the one an ungrafted sucker, while the other had been grafted. No wind, however squally, could break through the cover they afforded, nor could the sun's rays pierce them, nor the rain get through them. So closely did they grow into one another. Ulysses crept under these, and began to make himself a bed to lie on, for there was a great litter of dead leaves lying about, enough to make a covering for 2 or 3 men, even in hard winter weather. He was glad enough to see this, so he laid himself down and heaped the leaves all around him. Then, as one who lives alone in the country, far from any neighbor, hides a brand as fire seed in the ashes to save himself from having to set to get a light elsewhere. Even so did Ulysses cover himself up with the leaves. And Minerva shed a sweet sleep upon his eyes, closed his eyelids, and made him lose all memory of his sorrows. So, it's only been an hour, and I could go. I still have battery. I still have plenty of battery to continue. So give me a moment to have a drink and to let me talk a little bit about what we've just read, because that was the end of book 5. Okay, so let's just be very clear. What I am not doing is establishing with that book that what Plato is doing by talking about waters in the first 2 speeches of Phaedrus, that when he says something like, let me just cross the river and go home, I'm not saying that he means the river Styx. I'm not saying that he only means let me die rather than blaspheme the gods. It's what he says, but I'm not saying that's his only meaning. And so what I'm also not doing, having read that, and then preparing myself emotionally to maybe just go ahead and read the Phaedrus now, what I'm not doing is telling you that Plato is drawing on that scene as he has his Socrates develop out a good life and a good afterlife. And what I'm not telling you is that he's using Socrates as a psychopomp in the same function and form as Egyptian psychopomps or the much later Jesus and his waters of life. I'm not saying that, because that would be factually wrong. You understand? That would be factually wrong. Because many of the interpretations that I would need to reach toward, the evidence to build that argument, comes later. I don't know what Plato is doing with the Phaedrus, but I do know that other people had psychopomps and that the Greeks didn't have one in public. Except maybe Minerva. And so what Socrates is doing with the Phaedrus, and I'll say this again in part 4, is he's using eros to show how you can do thought experiments to arrive at truth. And he's using a lot of not words in order to get there. He's using a lot of paired opposites. And he's pairing those opposites by saying something like truth or untruth, rather than truth and lie, or truth and misrepresentation. Because truth, untruth, a rhetorician can't quibble with. You see what I'm saying? The word truth comes from the word lethe. The word the word truth comes from the word aletheia. Aletheia is developed or derived from aletheia, which means not forgetting. Lethe is the river of forgetting. And so, if what Socrates is saying is allow me to cross the river Lethe and forget that I even engaged in this, instead of let me die, let me forget that I opened this door, that I ever heard that speech, that I ever had this thought. We can connect these 2 visionary scenes that I've shown you, and there are more in the Odyssey, so make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all of that. I said I wasn't going to do it at the end, but here I am. If you want me to do more of the Odyssey, you got to tell me this stuff. If you like it. Mr. S, keep doing what you're doing, buddy. You're not who I'm talking to in this moment. I don't talk to you enough, but I talk to you too much in these videos. At the end of this trial that was imposed upon Ulysses by all of the gods agreed to do it, and then Poseidon decided to do it in a particular way. He's like, okay, well, they agreed to let him go. Well, I won't kill him, but I'm going to make him suffer. Have you ever felt like that? Like what you're going through is difficult enough to drive you to the point that you could just give up from the suffering, but it itself isn't going to kill you. Then, as one who lives alone in the country, far from any neighbor, like in a tent on the other side of a shopping mall, Shaggy hides a brand as fire seed in the ashes to save himself from having to get a light elsewhere. Even so, did Ulysses cover himself up with leaves, and Minerva shed a sweet sleep upon his eyes, closed his eyelids, and made him lose all memories of his sorrows. For just a moment, in sleep, he was able to cross back over Lethe and forget. Forget it all. And sometimes it takes exhaustion. Maybe not for me, or not for you. Maybe you have good sleep hygiene and you're able to just go to sleep when you want to. Or maybe your life is cognitively and physically stimulating enough that you sleep fine. But for people like me specifically, I need to be cognitively exhausted. I need to push myself every day to cognitive exhaustion. And most days I would like to be physically exhausted as well. I can't afford to get physically exhausted because that requires too many calories and too much protein, too many carbs. But I can get mentally exhausted. The thing is that it takes longer every day I do it, and I've been doing it since I can remember. So 5 or 6. So if you can't consume these in one, and you can't follow everything that I'm saying, don't feel like you need to. This book is available for you to read for yourself. It's available for you to find other readings online. I know that the Great Courses lecture series has multiple lectures about this. I don't need to be your only source of information. In fact, I would recommend that I not be. I would recommend that you trust yourself and your intuition enough to know when you're being communicated with by a text or by an entity or by a human being, and that you follow what's right for you. You understand? Sometimes we've got to help the people around us. Sometimes a hurricane hits our house and we have to do something about it now. And sometimes, just doing what we can do for ourselves and not worrying about the other people who are trapped under that busted roof of the hurricane, from the hurricane, is the right thing to do in the long term. Even if it seems callous, even if it seems antithetical to your own belief. Thereon, just do your best. Okay? That's what this story is about. There are no perfect answers. There's no perfect pursuit. Okay? There's no sinless life. Unintended consequences are the road that paves hell. Okay? And so just be intentional, be aware as much as you can, and then be mindful that you can't predict everything, and that sometimes you will just have to suffer the slings and arrows of great misfortune. The end is not the end you see. It's just the recognition of a memory. Sometimes really all there is left to do is wake up to who you are and then follow that. Because even in the city, even surrounded by millions and billions of other human beings, your life is yours until you will it to someone or something else. The process of getting it back is up to you. I'd love to help, but I keep laying out for you the way that you can get that help from me. So if you pay me enough money lifetime, I may even offer you my phone number, so I can be right there in your pocket if you need somebody who's going through it too, to just say, man, I'm really fucking going through it today. Take care of yourself. I can't do it for you, but a life where I can do it with you is a life worth living. Have a good day. Today could be your last chance, and you don't know until it is.